I'm so excited to share with you that this podcast is sponsored by The Real, the best place to shop authenticated luxury bags, clothing, watches, and so much more. I love scouring The Real for new pieces. There are 10,000 new items every day, and they do their daily drops at 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can shop and sell at The Real, which is great because you can use those earnings to buy something special. I just bought a gold Fendi bracelet, a hinge bracelet. I can't wait to wear it. The Real is attainable luxury that upgrades your personal style. With up to 90% off retail, you can finally have the pieces that you've been dreaming of from brands like Gucci, Fendi, and Prada. So The Real is the world's largest and most trusted resource for authenticated luxury resale. With thousands of new arrivals daily, no one does resale like The Real. And now you can get $25 off your first purchase when you go to therealreal.com/Kate Casey. That's therealreal.com/Kate Casey to get your $25 off. Start shopping at therealreal.com/Kate Casey. Now, we both know that shopping for a rug can be challenging. You've either got insanely expensive handcrafted rugs or the mass-produced alternatives that won't hold up. But that's where Revival Rugs comes in. Revival's founders didn't want to spend thousands on a new rug, but they didn't want to settle for less either. Revival is a global company with teams in the U.S. as well as weaving regions in India, Turkey, and Morocco. Revival works with artisans to preserve rug-making traditions and pass on this value to you. Eliminating middlemen allows them to remove steep markups, giving you amazing value at incredible prices. And Revival's popular washable rugs have the look and feel of a real rug, so you don't have to sacrifice style for convenience. And my favorite, which I ordered, is the sweatshirt rug, and I also love the stripe rug. So spruce up your space with Revival Rugs. Visit revivalrugs.com/realitylife and use code KateCasey20 for 20% off your first order. That's revivalrugs.com/realitylife, code KateCasey20. One more time, revivalrugs.com/realitylife with code KateCasey20 to save 20%. Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. I hope that you have had a great week. I'm so excited for this episode. I have to say, I'm still reeling a bit from the White Lotus finale. I'm wondering if you are too. I know I watched it a couple days ago, but I keep thinking about that monologue that the character Lori gives about female friendship. It resonated so much with me. There's something to be said about long friendships from childhood and the importance of having someone who's been witness to your life. I was gutted. I cried so hard. And I'm also going to miss White Lotus because I feel like we were all collectively watching the same thing together. The fact that you couldn't binge it was something to look forward to every week. So bummed it's over. So if you are looking for something else to watch, make sure that you go to my What to Watch list. It's at katecasey.substack.com. I know I say it all the time, but truly, it's going to save you so much time. There are so many great things that are coming out. Mariska Hargitay from Law & Order SVU just announced she's got a forthcoming documentary about her mother, Jane Mansfield. So lots of cool stuff that's coming down the pike, and I don't want you to miss out on it. Also, make sure that you're checking out my bonus episodes at Patreon, patreon.com/Kate Casey. If you want to hear behind the scenes stories of podcasting, pop culture, I've got a lot of true crime, stuff about the aristocracy, personal anecdotes, all of it. So make sure you check that out as well. So the first thing is the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills reunion aired a second part this week. I always tell you this. If you start to look at each of these franchises for their individuality, it's really kind of interesting. Each franchise tells the story of the women that live there, the culture of the city. You could just pick each person's life story apart, the way their lives intersect, what each woman's backstory is, how each franchise is different. I mean, someone could do a college class on it. I find it endlessly fascinating. So here's what I found interesting about this second part of their reunion this season. And the season, I got to say, I've said it before, I thought it was kind of boring, but these are the things that I took out from the reunion. Well, it begins with Garcelle being irritated by Kyle. And in the first part, you understand that at some point there was a discussion between Kyle and Sutton about not bringing up Morgan on camera. And then Garcelle says she's been irritated with Kyle because the fact that she asked her to do so off camera, which I think she's trying to say, like, this feels like gamesmanship. And Kyle had just said Sutton and Garcelle had been mean girls for how they handled discussions about Morgan. And I think they were both like, we're mean girls, but you're asking us off camera not to bring her up. But this is a huge part of your life. And let's be honest, we're all on a reality show. What are we doing here if we're not talking about our lives? One can't be completely closed off about a gigantic portion of their personal story, especially when they are compensated far more than the other ones. So there's that, duality. There's what we see on camera and what happens off camera. So I was glad that she kind of addressed that. So on stage, Kyle insists that she confided in Garcelle because it was in an effort to show that she trusts her. Now, one could see that as, I'm trying to reach out to you and build a connection. Or you could see it as, we film this show for a few months a year. I barely talk to you when we're not filming. And right before, it's pretty convenient, right before we start filming, you reach out to me, suddenly interested in myself and having some sort of friendship connection. And you make a point of saying, by the way, just don't bring up this person that I spend an enormous amount of time with, if you can. So what is so beautiful about that moment is that when Kyle kind of says, I just want to try to get close to you, Garcelle takes a deep breath and just says, okay. She goes, thank you. And this is why I'm going to miss her so much, because in a way you can see the difference between a trained actress from someone who just became a reality star. She's so good at saying so much without saying it in a way that actresses have to do in their own roles. She's so good at doing it in these scenes because you see that it's clearly her saying bullshit in the classiest of ways. It's like a period drama. It's like high level mind ninja work. She doesn't go into a tirade. She doesn't follow it up with a snarky remark. She just says, thank you. Again, says so much without saying it. Well, then Andy asked Kyle what her response would be to viewers who take issue with her not revealing parts of her life. And she says, I'm not going to, for example, say something that is going to affect my daughter's lives for a TV show, for a network, for fans, for ratings ever. So if it's going to hurt somebody that I love and I care about, I don't care. Here's the thing. I don't think this is about her daughters. Remember, her husband Mauricio had a series on Netflix for 2 seasons. They had discussions about their split on the show. Her daughters were heavily involved in that show. 3 of her daughters are adults. I think she's caught in a quandary because it seems like Morgan is the one who does not want to discuss their relationship. So she's in a prickly situation. So now all of a sudden, you're screaming at me right now. Wherever you are, you're like, Kate, but come on. They made that sensual music video together. Her music lyrics taunt a relationship. And to you, I say, you are correct. I think it's crazy too. But I think that that's the situation she's in. I think Morgan is the one who's saying, do not bring me up. And you ask yourself, well, why? Maybe she's not ready to be open about what's going on. Maybe Kyle actually is, but she is taking caution because of Morgan. And I'm sure that everyone in her life is scratching their heads too. Listen, Morgan has appeared on the show. And as Andy pointed out, her career has benefited greatly. I don't get it either. I just saw a clip from her concert where she plays up the lyrics of Jesse's Girl. You know, the lyrics go, I like my girls a little bit older. I think the control lies with Morgan. And I hope that Kyle doesn't get her heart broken. And also, I take into account that we've been watching Kyle for so many years, and I think we begin to see her as our friend. And we notice things about our friends that they don't necessarily see about themselves. I think Kyle is someone who tends to please others before herself. She's the youngest in her family. There was turmoil. She worked as a child in a brutal business filled with rejection and instability. People pleasers prioritize others' needs and approval, and often at the expense of their own. They struggle saying no, setting boundaries, expressing their true feelings. So it's almost like Kyle's running around a figurative house, trying to keep everyone's light from going out at the expense of burning out hers. She wants to make everyone in her life, including production, happy. And the people who tend to people please avoid conflict. They tend to avoid disagreements or situations where they might express a dissenting opinion. And she does this at the reunion. She just did that with Garcelle. Whenever anyone expresses frustration or a differing viewpoint, she gets emotional And she either quickly apologizes to move on or she pivots the conversation to maintain harmony. I'm sure we all know people like that in our own lives. So I think she spoke to Sutton and Garcelle privately about not bringing up Morgan because she's trying to make Morgan happy. And again, I think every franchise tells a different story based on the women who live there. In this case, the dominant industry is the entertainment industry, and that dominates the culture too. For example, Real Housewives of Miami is about passion. They put everything they feel out on the table. Beverly Hills is much more contained. Because when you live and operate in a city that is fickle, it's all based on being next to the most powerful and famous person in the room. You never really get a full picture of how someone feels. They're too afraid of pissing off the person that might give them their next job or party invitation. Everyone is looking past your shoulder to see if there's someone else in the room that can do more for them. You never really fully pull your cards out. And Sutton highlights this too, in my opinion. She doesn't want to upset Kyle because she's beloved by production and the network and because Kathy is so connected. So she always wants to be on good terms with them. But then if you looked at a Ramona Singer or a Bethany Frankel in New York, they would call it out. Why do you kiss their ass? When will you unglue yourself? New Yorkers are more direct. It's a matter of cultural survival. So then you go into Dorit. She's still enraged that Kyle spoke to PK. During the reunion, Kyle admitted that even after she'd said she'd stopped texting PK, she called him after she and Dorit got into an argument when they were in Oceanside early into the season. And there's a lot of discussion about girl code. I think the girl code is an extension of the show. Why are you telling PK about what is happening on the set versus why are you communicating with our friend's ex? It's more about why are you talking about the show? Why are you doing that? I don't think that Dorit and Kyle were ever really that close. And I've said that before. I think that PK spent a lot of time with Mauricio. So Kyle ended up knowing more than the others about what was going on in their lives and their marriage. And I think that she knows too much. So then you're stuck in this predicament because you end up being closer to the husband because he's around more and you know too much. But again, in New York, Ramona would tell someone, listen, I think your husband's more interesting than you, or frankly, he's been a better friend than you. You're too selfish. But in Beverly Hills, no one fully goes there. While Kathy Hilton joined the Housewives on the couch, host and, all-knowing kind of person when it comes to all of the dynamics of their relationships, Andy has asked for an update on the middle sister, Kim Richards, who reportedly recently was hospitalized and placed on a psychiatric hold following a substance abuse relapse. So a tricky subject. And Andy has been there from the beginning. He has intimate knowledge of the intricacies of that family and their dynamics. And of course, he knows Kim very well as well.
We had a 1,200% increase in sales using TikTok ads.
My name is Linda, and I'm a co-founder of Love & Pebble. We created Beauty Pops, a frozen facial that melts into nourishing skincare.
I started this business with my husband, and we do everything from packing orders, marketing.
Before, it was just me creating videos, but now I have over 2,000 affiliates that are working with us. If we can do it with TikTok ads, you can too.
Want to grow your business fast? Head over to getstarted.tiktok.com/TikTok ads.
Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
Kathy and Kyle confirmed that Kim had been spending time in Florida and that they thought she was doing better. But I thought it was interesting the way that Kyle looked at Kathy. Like, let's move on, which goes back to like people pleasing. Like, I don't want conflict. Her eyes always tell a bigger story. They get wider when she wants to avoid something. And I respect the way that they protect their sister. I think that's commendable. And I think the audience understands that too. But I think that again goes back to I think the way that Kyle kind of communicates and her coping mechanism. And again, it goes back to, I think we all watch these shows and we feel like the housewives are our friends. And sometimes we notice things about our friends that they may not necessarily notice about themselves. And we all want the best for them. And even, Kim has not been on the show for years. I think we all kind of worry about her too. But you kind of get a window into the family dynamics in that moment when Andy asks about Kim. Okay, and then also Dorit went after Sutton for the wallet comment. She says, you don't exactly live like the Queen of Sheba. You live on a main road. I mean, I don't know why you think you're superior to anyone. And I know you're used to buying people and buying gifts and trying to buy, but there's a lot more to life. I mean, two things could be true at one time. Dorit could be a monster, and so could Sutton. I mean, they operate in different ways. And maybe that is true. Maybe Sutton does feel like using money is her way to get into a door. Or if you're insecure about the way you communicate or friendships, maybe that buying a gift is your way that you feel like you can kind of ease your way into something. But I also think it's crazy that Dorit is commenting about someone living on the main road and, you're not that wealthy when there was discussion of financial issues in the last episode. So I thought that was a little bit crazy. I noticed Jennifer asked Garcelle if Sutton was on anxiety medication, and she may have been. Dorit was trying to taunt her, get her to react, but I don't think she physically could react that big because I do think that's possible. She was on anxiety medication, and who could blame her, right? I mean, it's like a really stressful situation. It reminded me of when Vicky was a zombie in the reunion when she had to address the Brooks cancer situation. I don't think Sutton will ever see how she can be dismissive. Look, she was raised by a dismissive mom. We've all just seen it this past season. This is where money can sometimes cloud people's reality because Sutton is a very wealthy woman, and sometimes wealthy people tend to surround themselves with people who are under their employ or want something. So the chances of someone else telling them the truth about themselves is slim to nil. And maybe the only person that can do that is Jennifer Tilly. And that's why I think she's been such a great addition to the show. Not just because of her comedic takes, because she's so funny with her little observations, but I think she may be the only person that can kind of tell Sutton the reality. I think that in the best of terms, Kyle could do that or Kathy could do that because she so much wants them to like her. But I think, unfortunately, she's just so low on the totem pole. They have much bigger friendships and lives, and she's just not as important to them as I think she would wish. So those are the kind of the things that I kind of noticed when I'm watching, and I wonder if you pick up on some of that too. And then I watched Real Housewives of Atlanta. Carlos King and I did an episode about 2 weeks ago, I'd say, about the season of Real Housewives of Atlanta. He is a longtime producer of reality shows. He's actually worked on Real Housewives of Atlanta in the early years. And he also gave a window in the culture of Atlanta, which is also an entertainment town. And as he beautifully put it, there are different rooms. And he put it into like different kinds of rooms. There are the athletes. There are the TV people, there are the society people. And so it makes me look at that show in a different way, thinking about which room each person is in and how well they can finesse those different rooms. We were excited about the new cast members and the way that the show would inevitably shift. We love new cast members because it brings new life stories. And also you can observe the ways in which the cast members' lives or conflict. And we're only a few episodes into the season. And then we have the big bombshell. So Brittany and Kenya, Brittany's a new cast member. They've gone back and forth earlier this season. And at one time, Brittany says she has a pistol and later expressed remorse to other cast members for her actions and threatening her. Now, to the degree that she was really threatened, a lot of people debate that. But she did bring up, like I'm packing or something like that. So during the episode this week, it aired on April 6th, Brittany shows up to Kenya's hair spa opening party, and she brings flowers and a card as a peace offering and, basically trying to move forward. As I think we've become accustomed to in some of these franchises where there's a huge fight, people hit below the belt, and then they're asking someone to move on the next day. In real life, we would be like, don't ever speak to me again. And I do think there is some magic in the way that Atlanta, over time, certain cast members, they've really hated one another. And it's a slow burn to build up that friendship again. So the evolution of that friendship is fun to watch. In this case, you've got a new cast member who probably, in fairness, really wants to make a mark, right? Because it's not just you that have joined the show, it's 3 other women. And there is probably a feeling of like, we got to make this show work. That's the breaking the fourth wall that I think we all kind of acknowledges there, is that there is pressure with these cast members to make these shows work. So she just wants to kind of move past it. Now, Kenya can't do that. Now, the unfortunate thing is this is a big moment for Kenya because she's got a new business, which I'm sure she has put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into. And that moment of really celebrating one's successes is diminished because this terrible thing happens. Kenya ignores that Brittany brought the flowers and had this gesture, and she starts giving a speech. This has been a labor of love for me. I've built a salon for my daughter, and I'm really proud of where I am. And I get people trying to bring me down for a reason, and I'm really sick of it. And you're like, wait, what? What? And then she specifically names Britt as someone who came for me because she was looking for a moment. This, of course, is like, you want to make a big splash on the show. This person who just came here with these fake flowers, somebody take these and just get them out of here. It's fake, and I don't want fake women around. Now, Britt has left. After she doesn't accept her flowers, she's like, I am out. And she explains that she wanted to apologize, and Kenya's reaction was rude, which it was. She says, I extended my olive branch. She wants to ignore it, and that's fine, but I hope she reads my card. It was very thoughtful. Hopefully she'll read it. Kenya wants the card to be thrown out. She says, burn that shit. So then it escalated, Kenya tells her guests, because I was paying her dust because I'm that bitch, been that bitch, still that bitch. I'm going to pay you dust. Then you're like, wait, what? Then she talked about having a gun and that she keeps it on her at all times. She did. So this woman was saying all this stuff, you don't know who the F I am. I'm like, no, I don't know who you are. So I did a little research and I found out who this bitch is. And you're just like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And everyone's kind of darting their eyes back and forth. And you're like, oh, blah, blah. And Brittany is outside, right? So in this crazy move, Kenya pulls out a stack of gigantic cardboard posters and it displays photos of Britt on them. And she's at first saying, here's the nose jobs, the lips, the fillers. And Kelly, who I think is fantastic, whispers to Portia, I'm not doing this. She needs to pipe down. And she's like, where is this going? Kenya goes on to show more evidence that our private investigators found. And they've blurred out the photo, and you know that it's very graphic photos of Brittany with someone and calling her like a video HOE. And you're just like, what is happening here? And I'm so sad about it because it was an overt act of humiliation against another woman, which is not acceptable. And you think to yourself, Kenya, this should have been a moment where you're celebrating your business. And how I don't think production was involved at all. I think production was probably so upset about it because I think they had a lot of great momentum going. I have to believe that there are people that are around her. There's someone that could have said, what are you doing? I mean, did she pick up those poster boards? Who printed them out? Like somebody could have jumped in and said, what are you doing? But this is where I go back to people who work on television shows sometimes surround themselves by people who are so excited to be around a reality star, or they feel like they're going to get something out of it, and they're not honest with the reality star. And this was a moment where I feel like Kenya made a huge, huge miss here, but also the people around her did her no favors by not acknowledging that she was about to drive the train into a wall, So it was just very distressing. And I think we all kind of were upset about it. And Kenya went on Tamron Hall's show on November 14th. And she said, hindsight is always 50-50. If I could do it all over again, I believe the photos were very distasteful and I elevated the situation. I've elevated situations before and I've taken full accountability for the things I've done. She said she was sorry for what she had done and I didn't have to take it that far. But when I felt threatened, which goes back to the pistol comment, I never had a child in a situation like this before. So that's why it escalated to the point where I was protecting not only myself, but my child. So the episode ended with a disclaimer. Based on Kenya's behavior, the decision was made to cease filming with her this season. So we will see what happens moving forward, but not a good housewife moment at all.
Claude is the AI assistant from Anthropic that millions of people have turned to just because it feels different. We've all tried AIs that come across a little robotic, but Claude gets it when it comes to empathy and emotional intelligence. That's why Claude has become the if you know companion for tasks like vision boarding, self-reflection, planning a move to a new city, plotting out scenarios for a big life decision, and more. Give Claude a try for free at Claude.com. That's CLAUDE.com. And let us know how you feel the difference.
What if your mind could trick your body into feeling sick? Or even worse. In Hysterical, I investigate the bizarre medical mystery that unfolds in a high school in upstate New York. It starts with one girl developing strange, violent symptoms, and then another, and then another. Rumors begin to swirl. Is it something in the water, inside the school, or is it all in their heads? Hysterical is my search for answers, and along the way, I uncover surprising connections to unexplained incidents around the world. Events that challenge everything we think we know about our bodies and our minds. Named Podcast of the Year at the Emmys, Hysterical is a mind-bending, unforgettable ride. Binge all episodes right now, exclusively and ad-free on Wondery Plus. Start your free trial of Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Apple Podcasts.
Lastly, I wanted to remind you of an oldie but fascinating case. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's the story of Chandra Levy. If you are familiar with it, you can watch Chandra Levy, An American Murder Mystery on Hulu. And I believe it aired in 2017, but I always find that this story is sort of timeless because it has to do with power, an affair, and a murder. And I feel like there are still people like myself who were in DC around that time that never forgot her story. And I still feel like there's so many missing pieces to it that still have yet to be uncovered. So Chandra Levy grew up in Northern California. Her parents, Bob and Susan Levy, she had a younger brother, Adam. In the spring of 2001, she's 24 years old. She's determined to pursue a career in DC. She hoped to pursue a career perhaps with the FBI. She moves to DC to intern with the Bureau of Prisons as part of her master's program in public administration at USC. So she had been working in California at the governor's office and also the mayor of Los Angeles and had these high political internships. She was an honor student, had great grades. She maybe could have been that kind of student that parlayed it into a fantastic career. It became national news, however, because she vanished without a trace. So while she was in DC, she allegedly had been having an affair with the California congressman by the name of Gary Condit. He was a Democratic representative from her hometown of Modesto, California. He had been a married man, 28 years her senior. She met him when she went to visit a friend in his office and gave them a tour of the Capitol. And it ultimately led her to having a very insulated life once she started a relationship with Gary, because the only time she'd really see him were after hours. So she wasn't going out. And I lived in DC. It's a fun town. And it's a great town because people really want to hang out with you, especially if they know that you're somebody who's come from another part of the country and you don't have a lot of friends. You get invited to things. So after work, that happy hour culture is such a fun thing to get involved with and to be part of. And she was insulating herself because she was spending all of those hours spending time with Gary. Gary's married, but his wife is back in Modesto. And he's working throughout the day, and then he's spending time with this very young intern. So her parents knew that she had this secret friend that she would go out with, but only later did her parents learn that that friend was this Democratic congressman named Gary Condit. She had graduated from USC in December 2000, but she had stayed in DC through the spring. So she had planned to return to the West Coast in May of 2001 so she could walk in her graduation ceremony. This was according to her family. When she disappeared, she was getting packed at her DC apartment near DuPont Circle. She was ready to come back home. So when you look at the crime scene photos, their suitcases out. She was clearly planning to move back home. She was going to decide what to do next, move back to DC to look for a job, apply to the FBI, or look into law school. She goes missing on Tuesday, May 1st, 2001. At first, her family didn't suspect anything. They thought maybe she took off somewhere, not necessarily like her, but maybe possible. But they couldn't get a hold of her. And her father starts panicking. He's trying to stay cool, but he just thought maybe she went out. Investigators checked her computer and eventually learned that she had researched a visit to DC's Rock Creek Park. Now, I need you to know at that time, people would go on runs there and I would think they were crazy. Even if you would drive past Rock Creek Park, you're kind of worried. It was a very dense area with trees, like a place that somebody could disappear, if you know what I mean. A search of the park found nothing. The park is twice as big as Central Park in New York City, so immense territory. When police searched Chandra's apartment, there were two things missing: her keys and a ring. Her ID, credit cards, and cell phone were still in the apartment. That was baffling, but also the camera in her apartment complex. They didn't seem to have footage of like anyone coming in or out. So why wouldn't you take your ID if you went on a run? It's very mysterious. So she goes missing, and her mother looks through her daughter's phone bill for any clues as to what may have happened. And the bill showed that she had called one number often. That number turned out to be Gary Condit's office number. So he's this young guy who became a mayor and then eventually became a congressman and was a congressman from 1972 through 2000. He never lost an election. So you're like, why is my 24-year-old talking to this elder congressman? Like, what is that about? So authorities in the media quickly speculated about her alleged relationship with the congressman, and he was interviewed several times by police. Though police never said Gary Condit was a suspect in her disappearance, he certainly became the center of a media circus. And when I say that it dominated headlines for months, it was all that anybody could talk about. So Susan Levy, her mother, goes on 20/20, and she says that she met with Gary Condit shortly after her daughter disappeared and asked him, "Did you kill my daughter?" And of course, he says no. In August of 2001, as interest in the case reaches a huge fever pitch, Gary grants an interview to ABC News' Connie Chung. And when I tell you, it was appointment television. Everybody was waiting to hear what he had to say. So again, this is August of 2001. She's been missing since May 1st. That interview was watched by 24 million people. And Gary says he has not harmed or killed Chandra, and he had nothing to do with her disappearance. When asked if he had a sexual relationship with her, he refused to answer. His response was, "I've been married for 34 years. I've not been a perfect man. I've made my share of mistakes. But out of respect for my family and out of a specific request from the Levy family, I think it's best that I not get into those details about Chandra Levy." And when I tell you, he kept repeating the answer. It was bizarre. And the way he kept saying, "and out of a specific request from the Levy family," I'm like, I think they just want to know what's up. So Gary said he was not in love with Chandra and he was not leaving his wife. He said, "I only knew Chandra Levy for 5 months. And in that 5-month period, we never had a discussion about a future, about children, about marriage." Gary said that when he was questioned by police, he answered every question truthfully, but then other people in law enforcement are like, So you didn't really know what the real story was. So 4 months after she disappeared, her case was pushed out of the media spotlight because of September 11th, 2001. It was like, that's all everybody cared about. Then the attacks on the Trade Center and the Pentagon and Pennsylvania happened and then completely disappeared. In fact, the Levys appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show remotely in May of 2002. And they said that afternoon they found Chandra in the park. So a full year later, they found her body. Authorities told the Levys that their daughter's body was discovered in a remote area of Rock Creek Park after a man called 911 saying he found a skull. Her remains were found down a dark, deep embankment in the park. Dr. Jonathan Arden, the Washington, D.C. medical examiner, said at a news conference that the cause of death could not be determined. However, the circumstances of her disappearance and her body on recovery are indicative that she died through an act of another person, which is the definition of a homicidal manner of death. 2020 had obtained crime scene photos that included Chandra Levy's jogging pants with knots tied at the bottom, which investigators say signified foul play. In July of 2001, 2 months after Chandra's disappearance, Ingmar Guandique, an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador, came to the attention of police. He was taken into custody in July for attacking 2 women in the same park where Chandra disappeared. One attack was in early July of 2001, and the other was in mid-May of 2001. In 2002, he was sentenced to 10 years in jail for assaulting the 2 women at knife point in Rock Creek Park around the time that she had vanished. So following a series of investigative reports by the Washington Post in 2008, the Metro Police Department followed up and finally obtained a warrant on March 3rd, 2009, so 8 years later, and arrested him, identified and dismissed by the MPD 8 years earlier. He'd been convicted of assaulting, again, those 2 women in Rock Creek Park around the same time of Chandra's disappearance and was still in prison on those convictions when the arrest warrant on Levy's death was issued. So prosecutors alleged that he had attacked and tied up Chandra in a remote area of the park and left her to die of dehydration or exposure. In November of 2010, he was convicted of murdering her and was sentenced in February of 2011 to 60 years in prison. But in June of 2015, he was granted a new trial. And on July 28, 2016, prosecutors announced that they would not proceed with the case against him and would instead seek to have him deported. So in March of 2017, he lost his bid to remain in the U.S. and was deported to his native El Salvador on May 5th of 2017. So Chandra Levy's murder remains unsolved. So you've got to watch it. For those of you, again, like myself, we were obsessed with this case, especially when you're around the same age and someone disappears from the city in which you live. It rattles you. So it's called Chandra Levy, an American Murder Mystery on Hulu. Every time I see pictures of her parents, it still upsets me what they've been through. So on Hulu, Chandra Levy, an American Murder Mystery on Hulu. And of course, you could watch that last episode of Real Housewives of Atlanta. I want to warn you, it's so upsetting. And then, of course, this week's episode of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Reunion. I want to hear what you guys think about it as well. Make sure that you listen for tomorrow's episode. Chelsea Devontis is back with me. You know, I love her. You guys love her too. We're going to talk about the Netflix doc, Bad Influence. I hope that you guys watched it. It's a tough watch, especially if you have kids, but an important watch. We're going to talk about Careless People, the book, and a little bit more. And then I've got an incredible Saturday series episode. Imagine this. A woman's best friend dies in a very famous plane crash in New York City. And that friend called her right before the plane crashed. And then at the end of the episode, I bring in Jonathan and he gives a message to this fantastic woman. It's a great episode. So make sure that you listen. And next week, guess what? I'm going to be interviewing Elizabeth Smart. So lots of great stuff in store. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. And then make sure you also leave a 5-star review. Again, it really helps with Podmetrics. I'm almost over 7,000. So if you don't mind leaving one, if you've not already done, I love to read the reviews. They are so meaningful to me. So I appreciate it. The What to Watch list is at katecasey.substack.com. Bonus episodes are at Patreon, patreon.com/KCasey. And make sure you follow me on social media. And I think if you saw what I posted last night on Instagram, you will definitely want to go back and listen to episode 631. I posted about my dad. So if you want to go back and listen to the first episode of that story, go to episode 631. And after you listen to that, go to episode 636. And it skips every 6 episodes. So make sure you check that out. And then I'm on TikTok at It's Kate Casey and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at Kate Casey.
Everyone has that friend who seems kind of perfect. For Patty, that friend was Desiree. Until one day,
I texted her and she was not getting the text. So I went to Instagram. She has no Instagram anymore. And Facebook, no Facebook anymore.
Desiree was gone. And there was one person who knew the answer.
I am a spiritual person, a magical person, a witch.
A gorgeous Brazilian influencer called Cat Torres, but who was hiding a secret. From Wondery, based on my smash hit podcast from Brazil, comes a new series, Don't Cross Cat, about a search that led me to a mystery in a Texas suburb.
I'm calling to check on the two missing Brazilian girls.
Maybe get some undercover crew there.
The family are freaking out. They are lost.
I'm Chico Felitti. You can listen to Don't Cross Cat on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.